Hello, welcome all in this third episode of Sustainability Simply Put Talk series. And today we have Laxmikant Deshpande with us for this episode. He is a postgraduate in environmental science and has played instrumental role in developing India's first mangrove mobile app, India's first English and Marathi storybook and website on mangroves, development of butterfly garden, and many other biodiversity initiatives. So it's a great fortune for us to have Lakshmikant ji in this episode. So I would request Lakshmikant ji to please introduce to our viewers, to our listeners, a short introduction of yours, please.
Thank you, Dhananjay. Thank you for this generous introduction. I think you have covered a lot of it. But just to add a little bit of more about me, I have done my MSc with Environment Science. I have about 22 years of experience in biodiversity conservation, environment education, and associated environmental topics. I am also recognized as a Darwin Scholar from Field Studies Council UK for biodiversity monitoring and education. I have done my social development course, which is a CSR course from SPGN Institute of Management and Research. So in that sense, I have been very lucky, I must say, to be associated with institutes, NGOs and organizations, to have worked over these many years. And yes, I like to sort of talk and write a lot.
Wow, that's really nice. You have studied from premier institutions about sustainability, about biodiversity conservation. So I would like to ask you the first question: what is sustainability for you?
Yeah. So the conventional definition of sustainability is very standard. It talks about using our resources judiciously and keeping them enough or in stock for the future generations, which is a very valid kind of definition. But I always feel that there are some gaps in the standard definition. So I would like to add some more perspective, which I feel are important. Dhananjay, when we talk about our progress or our development, we always talk about resources, which
Right.
in a way relate to standard of life. To make it simple, how big house you have, whether you have an AC or refrigerator, whether you have a vehicle, whether you have a good job. All these are indicators of standard of life. But what we miss often is quality of life. So quality of life also means that do you have very good quality of water? Do you have good air that you breathe in? Do you have greenery around you? Is it freshening? Are you living in a neighborhood which is socially equitable or where there are equal opportunities for everyone? So standard of life is important, but quality of life is also equally important. And when I talk about sustainable development, I feel that quality of life is something that we should look at. So essentially, it means that we have to consider three P's: people, profit, and planet. I also would like to draw attention that when people are talking about sustainability, especially corporates, organizations, governments, we are talking a lot about technology transfers and using ways in which we can say reuse, recycle. We are talking about circular economy.
Right.
But one first R, that is in the 5R principle, the first R, and which is very important in the hierarchy, is reduce. And I think that is something we have to kind of also keep in mind, that the resources are not infinite, and even with the best of the technologies, they will get over. So I think reduction in consumption and increasing equity in society for equal opportunities is something I would like to call as a sustainability in true sense.
Oh, wow. That's great. I really like the 2 points that you mentioned. First is the quality of life, because in cities, the standard of living is higher, but the quality of water, quality of air, there are no gardens. And the second thing, as you discussed the 5R, right? The first R is reduce. Just recently, I came across one article and where they were saying that before reduce, there should be a refuse.
Yeah.
Instead of reducing, instead of thinking about how to use it, can we eliminate it completely? Can we refuse it at all?
Yeah.
So that was just one point that came in my mind. Yeah. After the sustainability, as you rightly said, I completely agree that we should focus on quality of life. You have interesting work, right? So how you came into this field? What motivated you to study environmental science and work in biodiversity?
I think there was no choice actually. Since a kid, when I was a child, I think I liked nature. And growing up in city like Mumbai, of course, there was very limited exposure to wildlife.
Mhm.
But I was fortunate to have a very good society, and in even earlier days, the
Mhm.
nature was everywhere, just outside our window. So in our
Right.
society also, there was a small patch, empty patch, and a big playground. And I distinctly remember that as a kid, I would used to go over there very often. And there was a lady in our housing complex. So we both would plant vegetables and plants and, different seasonal fruits. And we would enjoy doing that and see the plants growing and fruiting. So I think that was first exposure to the nature that I had, and I think that hooked me up somewhere to the biodiversity. Then, of course, I used to bring a lot of animals to the house, and that used to be a nuisance to my parents because they used to call me crazy for bringing all animals in the house. So that
Yes.
was how was the other thing. But I am also lucky that my parents, like especially my father, loves moving around. So he took us across India. In fact, we have gone as far as Andaman Nicobar from Mumbai and
Oh, wow.
south of India and even Far East. So I think ज्याला आपण संस्कार म्हणतो, those sanskars were always there about nature and wildlife conservation. Then when it came to college, I was again lucky to have a good friend with whom I used to move around for camping, and we both came across BNHS, Bombay Natural History Society. So I took
Mhm.
its membership, and it was a new world for us. We started going for
Wow.
nature trails, wildlife camps. In fact, I attended the first bird ringing camp of BNHS way back in 2000, I think. So that's how it all started, and it motivated me. So it was a very natural choice for me to get into this. I initially was thinking about wildlife, MSc with wildlife. That was very first choice of me. But it was that in those years it was available only in Dehradun, and somehow it didn't happen. So then I took up MSc Environment Science at Pune University. But it also was beneficial because it offered me 360-degree views of the environment and not just the nature. So it was very easy to understand the interlinkages.
We can come to next very interesting question based on how you came into the environmental science, right? Because many times when we think about education for sustainable development, ESD, how to create awareness about sustainability, environmental conservation, how to pass on to next generation. So I guess what you told us, so it was something related to your childhood, right? So if we want to spread the awareness about sustainability, how would you suggest, what is the best way, and how can we create the awareness for these important issues?
There are two ways of looking at it. One is the formal awareness, other is the informal awareness.
Right.
Formal awareness is in the education system, and thankfully, we have environment studies or environment science or environment education as a subject in school and colleges.
Right.
A couple of years back, some state governments has taken as a keeping it environment as a different subject, and others have taken infused approach. That means the environmental concepts have been infused in different topics. But whatever route we take in formal system, one thing is very clear that environment cannot be studied only through books or by reading.
Right.
I read, I see, I go out, I do, and I learn. That is what applies perfectly to any education.
Right.
So, giving exposure to students is something very essential. And when I talk about nature education, I do not talk only about different habitats and forests and wildlife and biodiversity in your area. I also talk about abatic factors, because when schools and colleges arrange exposure visits, they will generally go to a seashore, a beach, a forest, say a nature park, a museum, wherever children can learn about nature. But that only covers the biotic part. The abatic part, that is soil, air, waste, water, energy, are equally important. And in fact, these abiotic components shape up the biotic part. Like simply
Right.
speaking, what kind of biodiversity you have, wildlife you have, will depend on the type of soil, the availability of water, and these other factors.
Yes, that is the basis on which
That is the basis on which
biodiversity.
life forms. So I think for schools and colleges to arrange visits even to municipal waste management sites, dump yards, water treatment plants, energy supply units, or say energy management structures or departments of your corporation is very important. Because by doing this, children will or students will certainly understand how these resources are managed, who is managing it, what is the process of it, what are the current lacunae or gaps in this management, and what can be done. So a field visit, interview is something very, very important, I feel. The other part, I think, is a fine combination of theory and skills. We are moving in the world, we are moving to the world where skills are very important because we have a lot of theory, but practically we lack skills. So I think in this case, at school or college level, the thought that environmental careers are important, and when we talk about it, you don't really have to only become an environmentalist or not have to do only the environmental subjects, but even the ordinary professions. What is the scope for environment management in those professions is something very, very critical. For example, the CAs can take part in environmental audits and valuation of ecosystem services. The engineers can take part in the innovative designs, which are actually built for sustainable products. In the hospitality sector, what is the scope for your campus management so that biodiversity remains alive? So, practically, environment touches our life everywhere. So there is a good scope. So I think this is somewhere a teacher should really focus that environment is an interdisciplinary subject, and ESD is also participatory.
Right. So I guess this part is missing in environmental education because generally students don't have idea that if they are graduating or completing their studies in environmental science, so that is the only way to contribute for the environment, right? So that is the myth, I guess. And yes, rightly said. So irrespective of your profession, irrespective of where you are working, what is your role, every one of us can contribute towards environmental conservation.
Absolutely.
Yes. While discussing about profession and work, so I would like to ask you, what do you do? What is your work profile? And,
Okay.
Yeah, so that seems interesting for us.
So I have been associated with NGOs, with semi-government institutes in my career, and I was fortunate to do some interesting projects. For example, in the past, I have worked for turtle conservation at Kokent. Then there was a campaign called Mumbaikars for Sanjay Gandhi National Park, and this campaign actually focused on media and police department because whenever there is a leopard entering into human habitats in Mumbai around national park, there is a panic. So the police department plays a very important role in this, and also media because they cover this full incident. And earlier it used to be very sort of they used to do their job, but obviously there was lack of understanding. So this campaign actually focused on training police department on what does the law say and how to control crowd and what are their duties in this situation. And for media also, we took them to national park. We made them meet Adivasis, we made them meet forest department, and actually the whole idea was to cover the incident through a different perspective and not paint only leopard as a villain. Go to the root of this problem. So that was something very interesting. Then I could also work with the NGO called CERE, and with SP Group we developed a biodiversity garden at Alibag, which has more than 350 Indian plant species. So something like this, and then I was also coordinating Green Teacher Diploma course, which actually teaches teachers on how to conduct environment education in schools. So a couple of interesting projects happened. I currently work with Godrej in Mumbai at Vikhroli. I work for wetland management and environment sustainability.
Are you optimistic about, because we have been getting multiple different news about negativity, about climate change, right? The natural disasters. So how optimistic are you about environmental conservation? And if you can share us some stories of change that you have observed over the years.
So there are two questions here. Let's split them.
Yes.
Let's split the questions. The first I would start with is the stories of change. And I think stories of change is something very important because people need to believe that change is possible, it is happening, and I need to witness them. So one story definitely is the renowned turtle conservation model in Maharashtra at Kokand by Sahyadri Nisarga Mitra of Bhau Kattare and his team. So they started actually protecting turtles by stopping poaching of turtle eggs, because turtle eggs used to be sold in local markets. But soon they realized that the entire wildlife conservation or turtle conservation is very linked to the social aspect. Unless there is participation of the local villagers, the conservation is going to be very difficult.
Right.
So then they started thinking about it. They developed a homestay model in Veras, Anjar Lake, Rishi, and other villages. The idea was city people can go to Konkan, stay over there for a weekend or for how many days they want, experience the nature, and by doing this, they also sort of contribute to the financial well-being of villagers. This idea was gradually sort of upgraded. They started a turtle festival. We were part of their first turtle festival also, and the idea became very hit. Then we thought that okay, this is good, but to explain nature, the villagers have to understand nature in a different perspective, because villagers have exposure to nature, but they are often not aware of the scientific name or the interesting facts. So then a nature guide training was conducted for local youth of these villages. We printed very beautiful aesthetic photographs and posters which were pasted in the village and in the houses. So gradually the turtle festival became a hit. We realized there is more crowd, so the village sort of started putting a waste management system into place, understanding carrying capacity of how many tourists can come at one time and how they need to be distributed. Today the model is self-sufficient, and in fact the villagers are earning, and whatever they earn through this ecotourism, a part of it goes to turtle conservation. I feel this is certainly a successful case study of conservation. It has been in fact recognized up to UN level, and it has been published in magazines and newspapers. The second case study I would say as an industry is definitely Godrej, where I work with, because as we know that Godrej is a very old and renowned brand. It started way back in 1890s, and they shifted their base to Mumbai in 1940s. And when they were developing their industrial township base, that is Pirojsha Nagar, again they realized that that it's not just about the township. They need to coexist in harmony with nature. And that is how the mangrove management project started. And one of the first large scale mangrove plantation in Maharashtra was done by Godrej way back in late 1990s. The second question that you asked is difficult one, I must say. You asked me how optimistic I am.
Yes.
I think as a conservationist, I think for me it's a mixed situation. I certainly see a lot of positives in situation. For example, earlier the nature conservation used to be sort of individual responsibility, used to be a part of only value. We used to teach children that we must conserve plants or save plants because they are ancient. They have appeared on the earth much before human beings, and because we get benefits from trees. But now there is a 360-degree change in the thinking, and there is something called as economics of ecosystem and biodiversity, which means that today we are actually financially evaluating nature and biodiversity. We are understanding what is the value of these in very holistic perspective. So when you understand the value of something, you are definitely compelled to save it. That is one positive part. Second thing is the world is moving towards target-based approach in environment management. Like businesses, now we talked about sustainable development goals. We talked about science-based target initiatives. So every government has taken some target of nature conservation based on international agreements and their own country perspective. And these targets are being passed to corporates, to academia, to research institutes, to state governments, municipal corporations. So in that sense, yes, we have taken a good path towards nature conservation, which is scientific and which is target oriented. The problem that I see is that the magnitude of problem is far more than what we are taking. I think we are all aware about the climate change and climate change impacts. And I think the pace of climate change is very fast. And somewhere our pace of conservation is not matching the pace of destruction. I think there we are lagging behind. And also I feel that although developed countries are talking about technology transfer, international cooperation, it is still not happening effectively. So I think that is a gap over there, and that scares me a lot, because if our conservation pace does not match the destruction pace, I think we all are in trouble, and
Right.
that worries me.
Right. And in short, doing less harm won't be positive, right?
Yeah.
Means still we are harming, but if you are saying that, but we are not harming as compared to last year, so that is not going to help. We need to shift from having the negative externalities or negative impacts, so we should move towards
True.
the positive
True.
thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is a lot of talk about it. There is definitely a good awareness about climate change, its impacts, and need of environment conservation. I think our actions need to match our talk now.
Right. Yes, and I really like the case story that you told, turtle conservation, right? So I guess that is the ecotourism, and in which the three P's of sustainability: planet, profit, and people. So all are working, all are taken care, and that is the sustainable solution, I guess. So hopefully we will find such kind of solutions in many other places, because there is a lot of potential for ecotourism. But I guess that is very critical part, ecotourism, because if any one of the pillar, any one of the P gets hampered, then it will have impacts on the other as well, and imperatively on environment as well. We should be optimistic, and at the same time we should spread more awareness. We should have capacity building of different people, different students as well, from, let's say, as early as possible, because I guess the mindset, the values that get instilled into person, so that's from early childhood. So yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. You got the crux very well, Dhananjay.
Yes, so hopefully NEP 2020 will also be helpful to achieve that. That will be interesting to see in a couple of years.
Yes.
Yeah, so do you have any suggestions about the career into environmental science for these students?
Oh, yeah. Actually, this generation is very fortunate. As I said, environment management is an established career now. It is getting standardized like other careers, and there are many, many courses which are now available. For example, MSc Wildlife, MSc Environment Science, MSc Sustainable Development, MSc Environment Management, Environmental Engineering itself. So there are courses which are available which focus on environment. I would also say that a person doesn't have to be environmentalist to conserve environment. To just elaborate my point, which I also touched briefly some time back, that environment can be managed in every profession. We are realizing, in fact, that environmentalist alone cannot manage environment, because it is touching every profession, every vocation, every occupation, and in all the working places, in neighborhood, the environment management should become a requirement now. So there are other professions. For example, I was telling you about ISO 14001 certification. So there are many good certifications available, and one can become certified auditor based on proper training. So that is an emerging career now. Besides that, an environment manager will require help of a very good graphic designer, very good product designer, the mechanical engineer. Energy conservation requires electrical engineers who design and operate those energy efficient systems. Then law is something very important, because environmental law is a topic which not many lawyers take up. Very few lawyers take it up. So I think environmental law, and there are courses available on environmental law. So based on your LLB, after your LLB, you can also take up environmental laws and kind of create your own niche in the law sector. So I would say that there is a time now, we have reached a stage now where every professional has to find his own niche in environment management, not diverting from the core subject. So whether you are in hospitality, whether you are in product development or engineering, whether you are in a service-based industry, whether you are an auditor or you are a certifying agency, there is a scope for environment management, and a lot of information about it is available. So just go for it and grab it.
Yes, perfect. So this is a clear message for all the listeners. If you are a student and you are pursuing, let's say, your graduation, there is a chance for you. So go for it, whatever is your calling. But at the same time, please study the environmental management. Please pay attention not
Yeah.
only for the marks,
Yeah.
not only for the academic, but
Yes.
also the practically what you can do for the environment.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Certainly.
that takes us to our next question, which is about uh, biodiversity is something very niche concept, right? So whenever we talk about biodiversity, we think that it is something very high tech, or we need it's very technical thing. But I would like to know from you, is there anything as a normal person can do for biodiversity conservation?
Oh, lots, lots, lots. I think this is one of the best questions I came across. I think, as you rightly said, people think about distant forests and remote landscapes when it comes to biodiversity, and people forget that biodiversity is all around us. Whether it is just a spider or ant in our house, or a bird sitting out on the tree, or a snake wriggling somewhere in the corner, they are all around us. Only thing is they are silent. They are scared of the human beings, so they are living harmoniously with nature. Now it is our responsibility to understand what is around us and how to live harmoniously with them. To elaborate, we can only conserve what we understand. Okay, understanding is the first step, appreciation is the second step, and conservation is the third step. So I think understanding nature and biodiversity is something that we can all do. We are fortunate to be in India with diversity of ecosystem. In fact, we are one of the top 16 biodiversity hotspot countries, and whether it is our cities, villages, national parks, we have nature everywhere. So taking our children and we ourselves going to a good garden, to a good park, attending nature trails, attending cleanliness drives or cleanup drives, attending plantation drive is something that we can start with, so that we are exposed to the nuances of nature, understand how this system works and how we are making impact on it, and how also our actions can contribute to its conservation. So exposing ourselves to nature is something that we can certainly do.
Right.
Second thing is, when we are in-house, whether it is house or office, we need to understand that our everyday actions have impact on the biodiversity. The linkages may not be very clear, but they are taking its toll. For example, the kind of washing powder we use, the kind of soaps, the phenyls or chemicals that we use in our homes and office, all of this gets mixed with the wastewater. Unfortunately, most of the cities in India still do not have very effective water treatment plants, sewage treatment plants. Like, for example, in Mumbai city itself, I think 40 to 60% of sewage is untreated. So when these chemicals mix with water, they pollute the water bodies, they kill the aquatic life. Not only that, they also reach us through food chain. We talk about microplastic pollution. So we need to understand that if we are not taking care of our pollution, pollution is returning to us through food chain.
And that's bioaccumulation.
Bioaccumulation and biomagnification. Yes, yes, yes. So taking care of the chemicals, understanding what kind of things we are using at home, and replacing the strong chemicals with mild chemicals or with the organic options. We do have so many organic options available now. I think that is something we can start with. The second thing is garbage. As I was telling you, the garbage is a big problem everywhere, and the garbage is not problem only because of the pollution. It also occupies natural habitats. It enters the food chain. It affects the sustainability of the entire planet now. Rather, not planet, I would say our civilization, our own very human race. And it is, leaching chemicals into environment, poisoning our own food. Yes. So segregation of our garbage at home, composting of the wet waste, and selling of the dry waste is we must practice. And we did have this practice in last generation. I'm sure in your house also you must be selling raddi and keeping the plastic aside. Yes. And trading the old things with Bartan Wali for good new things. Yes. It's something we must continue with those practices. I think the waste management is something that people can certainly do. And third thing is, when we are using our commodities, Dhananjay, you said about refuse, understanding if we can refuse certain products, whether we really need them, or when we are purchasing, can we buy them in bulk so that the packaging waste is less? Because the moment you start buying sachet and small bottles, that means you're actually adding to the garbage. So understanding and defining our needs and buying products in bulk will reduce the packaging waste is something that we can do. So a number of things are there, and I think green home or green office is a concept very popular now. And buying energy efficient products, for example, again, Indian government has rated electronic products 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, and 4 star, and 5 star. So buying energy efficient products, certified products is something that we as consumers can do for nature conservation.
Yes. So definitely. So first is understanding, definitely. So understanding is the basis on which we can start working. So yes, hopefully there are multiple ways through which we can contribute for environmental conservation. I would like to ask very basic question. Wetland is something that is having very least awareness amongst people. First thing, I would like to know what a wetland is. Second thing, if you can tell us more about the ISO 14001, because these two are keywords, I guess, with which there is need to have more awareness about it. Yeah.
So wetlands are natural habitats or even human-made habitats which are covered with water for certain period of the year. So they may not be covered by water 12 months throughout the year, but they will be covered for some part of the year. To make it simple, to give you examples, a seashore, a river bank, a pond, an island, a lake, a creek or estuary or lagoon are some of the examples of wetlands. Then there are wetlands like dams, check dams, which are the man-made wetlands. So wetland is any ecosystem or landscape which is covered with water throughout the year. Naturally, since it is covered for so long, it will develop its own ecosystem and creatures inside us. Even a dam will have certain kinds of fish and crabs, even though built by human beings in it.
Right.
So wetlands also provide us very important ecosystem services, which we don't realize. They are very silent. Sometimes they are in corner, and sometimes they are just neglected. Like a lake may be in the middle of the city and still not taken care of, or a dam may be far away from city supplying water to the city, but it is never looked at because we never go over there. So wetlands need to be conserved, and they provide many ecosystem services. So there are 4 types of services that they provide. One is called as provisioning or provide. So they provide us with water, with fish, crabs, prawns, and lobsters, and the plants around wetlands will give us food or timber or tannin. So this is called as provisioning service. Second is called as regulating service. So regulating service means they regulate the environment. For example, they maintain the soil moisture. They maintain the temperature, they keep the climate cool. They also capture carbon dioxide. In fact, today big talk is among conservation is carbon sequestration.
Right.
We know that global warming and climate change are because of 6 greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide being highest. And then we have observed that there is a research available which proves that the mangrove ecosystem can capture 4 or 5 times more carbon dioxide than the terrestrial ecosystems. So this is a very important ecosystem that people don't even realize. So regulating is something. And then cultural services or the supporting services. So they are useful for recreation, for livelihoods. So these are the reasons for which we need to maintain and conserve and manage our wetlands very wisely. Fortunately, we are blessed with a very detailed legislation, and we have many laws in India that actually talks about wetland conservation, coastal conservation, solid waste management, and water pollution. But what we need to do is to bring them in practice and work with the government agencies to implement these laws. So I think this covers about the wetland question, and there is fair understanding of it.
Yes. I got very clear understanding about wetland, and you also answered why it is important. So I guess we have very clear understanding of wetlands. Yes. About the second point, it was ISO 14001. So if you can just throw some light on this important.
So ISO 14001 is an international certificate for environment management. There are many certifications available. For example, 9000 is about quality management. Then there's a certification for safety, for carbon management, for human resources management. So this is an international certification system, one of which is ISO 14001, which specifies to environment. It works on the continual improvement principle, which means that I should continually improve my system. And it also acts on PDCA cycle, and it is very simple. It just sounds complicated. P is plan, D is do, C is check, A is act. So it is plan, do, check, act cycle. To convert this into practice, it actually simply means that we have to understand what is the environment of our office or our industry or our school or even housing complex, any confined geographical area we need to take. And we need to understand environment. We need to understand what are our own practices, everyday routine activities or intermittent activities, how they are impacting environment, and then how can we mitigate the negative impacts and how we can increase the positive impacts. So this needs to be defined in certain parameters that the certification tells us. And the next thing is environmental operations. So then to mitigate this impact, we have to implement long-term or short-term practices which needs to be documented, and each of these practices need to have performance indicator. So we have to prove that whatever target we have taken, we are achieving it. So these targets can be both qualitative and quantitative. And the beauty of this certification is that it is beyond compliance, which means it is not legally compulsory. You are taking it because you want to conserve or manage environment, but this will be audited by a certifying agency. So there are international or national certifying agencies which will actually audit your organization based on what you have defined for yourself. They are not dictating you, you have defined a system, but they will ensure that whether whatever you have defined is as per standards or not. And then they will audit, and then they will tell you what is lacking, what needs to be improved, or if you are not complying with the system, your certification may get suspended. This is a kind of self-imposed opportunity for environment management that fortunately many industries and even colleges and schools are taking nowadays. And this culture needs to spread because it talks about continual improvement, and we need that.
Yes. And to make any sustained improvement, I guess continual improvement is the only, the sustainable
Absolutely.
way, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So hopefully more and more industries, not only industries, the other institutions, maybe academia, maybe NGOs will also opt for the ISO 14001. Yes. So we understood a lot of things from you about biodiversity, the ISO 14001. Just the last thing that I would like to ask is there any book or podcast or any series that had phenomenal impact on you and you would like to share it with our viewers as well?
Okay. I think the first wildlife series that I saw that affected me a lot because it was like growing age, and I was young, and I was fortunate to come across it. So my generation knows about is The Land of the Tiger. The Land of the Tiger was a series on tigers of India.
Okay.
It talked about Project Tiger, tiger conservation, but not only about tiger conservation. It talked about different ecosystems and habitats in which tigers stay, and what is the food chain, and how do human activities impact it, and what is the Project Tiger doing. So by just taking tiger as a key species or as a star species or indicator species,
Right.
the government is trying to conserve entire habitats and landscape. I think The Land of the Tiger was one of the most beautiful and effective series that I came across. So I would definitely want parents to show it to their children. The second
Right.
thing that I came across in my college years was a book called Karyarat by Anil Avsat. So
Okay.
Karyarat, Anil Avsat is a very renowned Marathi
Yes.
author, and he has traveled across Maharashtra, and he has compiled examples of what good is happening in Maharashtra. And these are not just environment professionals. These are labor activists. These are health professionals. These are lawyers. These are farmers. These are forest officers. These are environmentalists. And so he has actually taken, he went to these places, he stayed with those communities and those experts. He spent days over there, and based on that, he has written very engaging book called Karyarat. Karyarat means to be always busy or be busy with something productive.
Right.
And that book inspired me a lot. a lot means a lot. I think I picked up my calling over there through that book. And
Wow.
again, David Attenborough's series on Planet and Biodiversity is something very interesting. It is available everywhere now on all the
Yes.
OTT platform also. So I think these are the three simplest things that any parent can actually, expose their children to. At least they inspired me a lot.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. So hopefully many more children, many more youth will watch this series, will read this book, and may they also get inspired and contribute for environmental conservation as you are doing. So yeah, so that was a great discussion. At last, I would like to thank you for your time, for your this wonderful conversation for conservation. At last, if you would like to share how our viewers can follow your work, how they can connect with you.
So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I mean, I don't have any special website or I don't have any blog. I do write I have written in newspapers and articles sometimes. So if you just Google with my name, perhaps you will come across articles on biodiversity and environment. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. So Laxmikant Deshpande, obviously put and you will get me.
Yes, and that takes us to the end of this discussion. But yes, thank you so much, Laxmikant ji, for this wonderful discussion. And
Thank you,
let's create a
Dhananjay, for
sustainable.
inviting me.